Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. So this week we are going to interview Ben Ivey. So he is the founder and CEO of the Entrepreneur Lifestyle. He is an international speaker and mentor. He himself has run businesses throughout the world, but now he really is a speaker, and he specializes in helping successful entrepreneurs reduce the stress and overwhelm that they may feel from running their business. He has a really great story of how he got into what he does, but just bottom line, you're going to hear his interview. He is just one of those really smart people that brings a lot of energy to the table, and he really helps to get you focused on what you need to know. But the reason why I wanted to have him on was he wrote an ebook called The Master Guide to Overcoming Procrastination as an Entrepreneur. And I read it, and just some of the tips in there just hit home for what we need to know in ITF. We're going to answer questions such as, why do entrepreneurs procrastinate? What are some of the main reasons? Also, what are different types of entrepreneur procrastinators? We're going to learn about people such as the avoider, the perfectionist, the worrier. We're going to see why those can stop us from making progress in our business. And then also we're going to talk about proven methods to remove the habit of procrastination in our business. But really, he's just one of those people that is in tune with business owners' minds, and he really can help us to overcome some of these problems. So without further ado, let's listen in on the interview. Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast, and I am really happy to have Ben Ivey. So, Ben, you are like a business coach, but you're like a business coach on steroids. You go speaking internationally. You talk to small business owners and large business owners as well, but you really help them to learn what you call the entrepreneurial lifestyle. Could you explain a little bit about what that is and why this is something that's been a passion project for you?
Sure. So this has been a great passion of mine ever since about 8-9 years ago. And there were two real main factors that caused me to go on this journey. The first one was that I was running my second business in Silicon Valley, and I was working incredibly hard at the time, and I just started burning out. And it was one of those experiences where I would work incredibly hard, and then I would just go on a downward slope. And maybe you can relate to that, where you're just working and working and working away, you're hustling, but I just woke up one morning, I was just completely burnt out. Now, on top of that, literally a week later, I ended up losing my father to suicide. And he was my best friend. I saw him the day before. And if anyone can imagine losing the person they care most about in the world, just like that, it was literally what it was like. I couldn't believe it. It came out like completely out of nowhere, absolutely no signs. Wow. And it was so challenging because he was someone that we all loved. And if we look at, Robin Williams, I think it was in August in 2014 with what happened to him, and we think of how much people loved him, it was very much the same for me and my dad. So when that happened, I ended up, like I said, quitting the business. And I went on this journey of self-discovery where I started traveling around to figure out, why do we do what we do? So I spent time in China. I studied something called neuro-linguistic programming. So basically like the patterns of the mind, how that works. And I thought, okay, well, the way to solve this is just to be happy all the time. Like that would make the most sense, right? Yeah, right. So I get very good at this NLP stuff because I was literally obsessed with, well, number one, finding out what happened to my dad, and also trying to figure out like, why as entrepreneurs do we do this? How do we create these parallel worlds, one which people see, but they don't see what really is going on underneath. So as I mentioned, I got pretty good. So suddenly it got to the stage where I was genuinely happy all the time. I had all the techniques. I was there. It was great. And I was doing speaking on different elements, but I'm not sure if you've ever had this where you're speaking to someone and you just feel like there's that something missing. Like you just feel like there's your surface level connection. And what was happening is I could understand where people were coming from, but I couldn't empathize because I was only experiencing a small level of emotion. It was neutral or happiness because I wouldn't allow myself to feel anything below that. Now, the challenge there is because I wouldn't allow myself to feel anything below it, I didn't experience the higher emotions as well. And it stopped me really connecting with people. So I knew I had a challenge, and I decided that I'd start to go on some seminars to really see if I could open up emotionally again. And it was really a defense mechanism when everything happened to shut down and just attempt to be happy all the time. So I went to a seminar by Tony Robbins, and I'm sure you've heard of him, but of course, I had no idea who this dude was, right? So I remember flying out from China, and I went to San Fran, and then I flew down to LA. And I got myself a ticket. I was super excited. I was like, all right, let's do this. So I remember walking in. I remember getting to the front. I went straight to the front of the stage. I'm like, I'm here early. I'm gonna get the front seat. So I sit down, right? Sit down. I'm there. I'm ready to go. I've got my gold thing. I'm excited. All right. And a guy comes up to me and he goes, excuse me, sir, you're sitting in the wrong seat. And I'm like, I don't think so, mate. This is God. I paid like $1,000 for this shit. I'm in the front, baby. I came an hour early. I'm ready. And he goes, this is platinum. And I was like, what the hell's platinum? How much is platinum? He told me how much platinum was. I was like, I ain't platinum. I'm going straight to the back. So I start walking back. I'm going past platinum, diamond, VIP. I don't even know how many different things they have, right? I'm right at the back. I'm literally got the worst tickets there. I could literally see the screen. It's like a huge YouTube video. It's unreal.
Oh my goodness.
I can't even see the stage. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I doing here? Right. So I chat to the person next to me. He's like, yeah, man, I've just got off 7 years of doing drugs and heroin all the time. And I'm like, oh. Jesus, man, like, what the hell have I done? I'm here with like some like I've got druggies here, this down.
You're in the slums of Tony Robbins.
I just need to open up emotionally. Jesus Christ, right? So I end up going there. I'm like, should I stay? Should I go? So I stay. And then if you've been to any of the events, they've got a file walk that you go through.
Right.
That's there to act as a metaphor to breaking through. Now, long story short, I did that and I started to open up emotionally and I started to connect with people on a different level. And as I started through that journey, I was already helping entrepreneurs, but what it did is it snowballed what I did because I started to be able to connect in a much deeper way to people. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it wasn't just about being happy all the time, but instead experiencing that breadth of emotions.
Sure.
Because the challenge that I noticed that I had was when I have this, then I will addiction. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is a lot of entrepreneurs say, when I'm successful, then I'll look after my health. Then I'll see my family. Then I'll do that. Yeah. And I think it's a real challenge that a lot of people have. So, since then it's taken me to, like I said, speak all over the world. I've done TED Talks in Chinese. I've, helped thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs from all over. And then in 2016, I had someone come up to me and say, can you teach me what you do? And I was like, nah, you ain't got any idea how long this will take, right? We were laughing and his name was Mark. It was the same as my dad. So I saw some synchronicity and I thought, okay, let me give this a go. So I took him on under my wing for a year and I started to make my own certification program. And since then I've had people from all walks of life go through that. So I could give them the skills to be able to help other entrepreneurs as well who wanted to live a great lifestyle whilst they build their business. And if I thought I knew a lot, being able to teach someone else, like that just cemented everything in. And suddenly I had to become very acutely aware of how I help people. And then, since then I've expanded the team. I used to fly around left, right, and center. Obviously with COVID, I'm not doing that as much. So everything's online and I get to speak to people across the pond like yourself. So I feel very blessed to be here. And that's a little bit of an intro that what got me on this journey.
Awesome. That's really great. Well, I think that's what really attracted me to kind of, because you had reached out to me through Instagram and, I get messages all the time through Instagram. So, it's very easy to kind of just brush things off, but you sent me a link, which we'll go over in a little bit because there were some really good points that I think our audience would be able to listen to. But I think just so you know, our audience mainly we're window cleaners. That's our main background. However, we are entrepreneurs. We're starting businesses on our own. A lot of times we don't have the business education. We are just, we have the equipment, we go out, we get the work and we work. And in the beginning, it's great because it's all new and it's exciting and we're seeing money coming in that before, we're working at a minimum wage job, we'd never see this money come in. And so everything's, great, puppies and rainbows and everything. But as time goes on and we actually start turning into businessmen or in women, we start kind of developing these bad habits. And I think like what you hit on earlier about just not connecting with people, when you get so wrapped up in trying to keep your business, above ground, floating, or growing, when you're kind of inundated with all of these new decisions that you've never been equipped to handle, that's kind of a default set for a single owner operator or a person who just has one or two employees. We can easily kind of sit into this like kind of robotic state where we're just making decisions and we're not feeling that, and so I think I really appreciated that. I'm very sorry to hear about your dad. I mean, that's suicide is very difficult, especially like you said, when it's out of nowhere. It's hard enough when your loved one's dealing with depression, other issues, but when you don't see it coming, boy, boy, it slaps you in the face. So I'm glad that you were able to turn that bad energy into something positive to help others. That's pretty commendable.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that, whenever we experience challenges in life, we have an opportunity to either, fill that with hate or fill that with love. And I think that it gives me, an ability now to be able to connect with people that I would have never had. And I think that when you can turn the worst day of your life into the best day of your life, that's when you truly have power. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have, met my wife. I wouldn't be where I am today, and the experiences that I've had. And, I've worked with people that are suicidal. I've saved people's lives. And I think of the snowball effect of that. And I feel so blessed that I've had those skills to be able to help people in those really challenging positions.
Yeah. And that's what Into the Flow is really about too, is taking the opportunity we have as business owners who have, I've been doing clean windows for 20 years. There's people in our group who've been 30, even 40 years doing the work. We now have the opportunity to kind of turn all those hard lessons that we had to learn, through the hard way, and we can pass those on to the newer businesses and help them to avoid some of the roadblocks. And so, when I went through all your information, I just like, wow, this guy really just fits exactly what we do at Into the Flow. At ITF is what we call. And in particular, you sent me a little e-booklet, and it's the Master Guide to Overcoming Procrastination as an Entrepreneur. And I saw it, I was like, okay, I got to have this guy on because we got to talk about this, because procrastination is probably the number one profit killer in our industry, because we have to make decisions. It's one thing, we know how to go out there and get on the glass and clean the windows and get the job done. It's the business decisions that we put off that costs us money and costs growth and ends up hurting us in the long run. So I went through this booklet, and Flowmies, I really want we'll put a link up to it. So you can kind of go through. We're not going to cover everything in here. I'm just going to cover a few things, but you really got to take a look at this, because a lot of the information here just hits home. But there are a few things I just thought maybe we could elaborate on. Maybe you can share your view on some of these. So you asked some questions in the book. And so the first one is, why do entrepreneurs procrastinate? And you list a series of reasons why. So the first reason that you had mentioned was negative associations. So what exactly do you mean by negative associations when it comes to procrastination?
Sure. Well, let me give you an example, right? I think with everything in business, there are things that we like to do, and there are things that we don't like to do. And if we take window cleaning as an example, I'm sure you guys love to window clean, right? I mean, it's a bad, right? You enjoy it, you get into your zone, you get into your flow, and you do it. Yes. You may not enjoy marketing that much. No. You may not enjoy sales, right? You may not enjoy having to do the accounting and the taxes and all that other headache stuff, right? And as soon as we associate headaches with it, we start to associate that, what we tend to do is we disassociate ourselves from it. So I'll give you an example from my perspective. When I was setting up my business in China, the amount of loopholes and different things I had to go through, I was like, is this even worth it? I was like, I don't want to do it now. Like, do I do it later? Like, I've got to fly here and they didn't do that right. I've got to go back. And what happens is we tend to take the easy route. And especially when you're making money in business and things are okay and it's not a necessity and you don't have someone there who's saying, hey, look, you might want to do this. What tends to happen is we just take a step back and we don't do anything. Yeah. And the challenge there is that we end up reacting for something that suddenly it's urgent and we're not proactive with it. So we end up getting ourselves overwhelmed. We create more stress because we have those negative associations with different parts of our business. So for those listening, and the reason why I asked that in the little booklet is for people to really reflect and think about, what tasks am I not doing in my business? And then looking to see if you can change that meaning. And that's really the next step. So an example is I've got a client who is very good at software developer, loves what he does, but hates following up with people, right? And he's trying to get these contracts in place, and perhaps you guys can relate where people maybe not be paying you on time, they may not be doing this, and suddenly you've got to follow up with them. He was like, Ben, I don't like following up. Like, why should I do it? It's not my job. And I'm thinking, hey, it's not your job, right? But you need to be someone different. You need to be the follow-up king, right? Or he's like, I could be the follow-up king. That sounds quite good, right? And now suddenly we're having a bit of a laugh.
You get a cape with that?
Oh yeah,
cape and a crown.
So you're laughing, right? But when he started to do it, I sent him a crown. Honestly, we had the funniest time. I sent him a crown, things like that, because I think that you've got to enjoy and have a positive association. So now he's got this, like, honestly, this huge red crown on his desk, and now suddenly he's like, okay, I should probably follow up with that person. And the difference that makes is changing that association. So now instead of just being someone that does taxes, you're a regulation chess player. right? Instead of just doing that marketing, you're there to be able to provide for your family. So that's the difference that it makes, is changing that association that you have to be able to help you move forward.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. That's true, because I do the same thing, and what I've done over the years, I've kind of learned, is to find people to do that for me. I recognize that this is, and some things obviously I have to do as a business owner, I have to do it. But a lot of the stuff, like what you said, collections, calling up, and I hate that so much. I hate that. Have the office do it. We have someone who does payroll now. We have, she's our bookkeeper. All that stuff I used to do myself, and it was just so overwhelming. And now that I've learned to give to what I can give to that, to others, I do. And the stuff I have to do, like what you said, I try to tell myself, okay, this is for the greater good. This is going to really be a positive thing for the business. So I can just get this done and be done with it, And I appreciate that point very much.
Yeah. And I think that what's very important is being aware of our language. I know that, you mentioned that how I should try to do things and things like that. And one of the things that I say is, like, you've got to move away from like try or should or these words, because it just kind of hypnotizes us into like, I don't know. But it's so true. As you start to build your business, you start to move out of these elements and you start to look into other things, because you can outsource it effectively. But the truth is, as you start to deal with the challenges in your business, you're going to get given new ones, right? That's what business is like. It's overcoming this challenge and taking on a new one. And the better you get at overcoming those and changing the association and being proactive, the faster you can snowball your business moving forward.
Awesome. That's good advice. I do really need to, I have a friend, Luis, who's really big on words you use, and I do really have to work on that and changing the words that I use in the vocabulary, because it affects your thinking. Should signifies I should do it. I really don't want to do it. And if we just change our thinking, it can change our state of mind. So I love that. The other one you mentioned on there was fear of failure. This is a big one with window cleaners, because we're often, like I said, we start up from scratch. We go through a long period before we become stable, where we have some type of security in our business. So what can we do to help keep fear of failure from stopping us from procrastinating?
Well, I think one of the big challenges that any solopreneur faces, whether they're doing window cleaning or something different, is you're starting to do everything yourself. And then suddenly you get to a stage where you're pretty good. And then you're like, okay, well, can I bring someone on? What happens if they screw it up? What happens if I lose that big client? Yep. And then you experience that internal conflict. So when you're experiencing that, what we want to be able to do is to move out of that fear of failure. But the truth is that, and this is why I think a lot of people go through oscillations where they do very well, and then suddenly they hands off a bit, they chill out a bit, and then they bring it back up again. And they go through these oscillations of working hard and then chilling out, because it's that fear that's really stopping them moving forward. And there's a guy that I'm working with at the moment. He is got multi six figures at the moment, wants to go to 7. And when we look into the core of it, right, the core of what is stopping someone moving forward, and why do you have that fear of failure? It can be a few different reasons, right? A couple, just to name a few. One is imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to start owning a business? How can I do this?
Absolutely.
Right? Who am I to start hiring people? I'm just a guy who cleans windows, right? I'm sure that's what they say. And the challenge there is suddenly you're really stopping yourself from making that step. And I work with a lady who, she was doing gardens. She would deal with gardens, once again, similar sort of industries where you're going around people's houses, you're connecting with them, and suddenly you're doing a job, hopefully on a regular basis. So that was the imposter syndrome, right? How can I start doing this? How can I start telling people what to do? Another side of things is not feeling good enough. Right? Am I enough to do this? And one of the keys that I see a lot of people do is they go on a downward spiral through the questions and the language that they use with themselves. So an example of a question could be, you're starting to move forward and then you think, what happens if I screw this up? And that's the first bit. And this is where awareness is very key of our language, as you were saying, because they say that and then suddenly they start to go downhill. Oh, well, I don't know about that. And then I'm not good enough here. And then this and then that. And then they start to go downhill. And this is where, if we can become acutely aware of the language that we use, suddenly it enables us to move forward. And this is where I challenge a lot of business owners, instead of just figuring out what you need for rent, think about, what is it that you want to be able to do? Is it provide for your family? Is it have a bigger impact? Is it launch a podcast? Because you're redirecting your focus from what you don't want to actually what you want. So as opposed to being a rubber band that snaps back, there is no rubber band there because you're focusing on something different. It's like driving your car backwards down the motorway. You wouldn't do it, right? So you shouldn't do the same with your life. And this is where you've got to focus on what you want. And that moves you away from that fear and allows you to start to move forward more sustainably.
I love that. You know how where fear of failure really comes out with window cleaning, how it manifests itself is because of social media. A lot of window cleaners will post videos of them cleaning windows or them doing different types of work. But a lot of times what happens is it kind of ends up being like a bragging thing, right? They're showing money. This is how much money I made today. This is what I did, and they start basically kind of building themselves up. But if you look at it on a surface level, they look successful. But if you look at it deeper, you start to see what they're doing is they're trying to convince themselves that they're there. And this is kind of like the evidence. They're not producing for everyone else. They're kind of producing for themselves as, look, okay, I'm successful or I'm doing what I need to do, and I'm glad I never got caught up on that. Again, nothing wrong with showing your skill or showing, how good you are as a window cleaner. That's just part of social media. But what I always try to kind of take a step back at is like, do I need that? Where am I at with the confidence of my business? Am I at where I don't need to tell other people how good my business is in order to have that? Or am I continually trying to convince myself because of that self-doubt, that I have?
And I think a lot of people believe they have to do a certain thing in order to be a certain way. I need to keep doing this, and then finally I will be a window cleaner that owns a business, or whatever that is to someone. And this is where I often challenge people. And I say that you're a human being, not a human doing, right? and so often we feel there's this prerequisite in order to be a certain way, right? In order to be inspiring, people need to view me as that instead of actually going above and beyond and just saying, I'm going to do this anyway, and start to actually let go of the outcome. And I think that's really important, because if you're tied on how many likes you get, how many comments you get, and you're worried about this, like it's the algorithms anyway, like chill out. I think that being able to take a step back and actually not take yourself too seriously is one of the best things that we can do as solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners to be able to move forward in a way where we actually enjoy the process as opposed to stressing us out.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Because I know when I'm happiest with my business, it's when things are just kind of flowing. I'm not forcing anything. It's things are working. I've got work for my employees. They're working within the system of the company. And like you said, I'm just being, I'm just kind of there to kind of monitor things. It's when we're starting to push things and we're trying to force things that it's not as enjoyable. It's definitely more stressful and it's more work than it is which the reasons why you did started the business in the first place, for sure. Okay, so the next one, and this ties right along with social media, is constant distractions. Because we all our window cleaners work off of our phones. That's our schedule. That's our customer base. I mean, we have apps that we use for our business off of our phone. That's probably the number one time waster for business owners. So what advice do you give for us when it comes to constant distractions?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing, and this is very important, is actually kind of counterintuitive, is to give yourself a break in the day. Now, why do I say this? Because if we look at procrastination and time wasting, it's time that you should be doing business, right? And it's time that you should be working. If you actually say, I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to chill out, that's not time wasting. You're giving yourself a break. And I think that if you can put those mini breaks in your day, what happens is suddenly it becomes much easier to actually get work done, because I'm going to chill out, then I'm going to do work, because no one can work end to end to end to end to end. And giving yourself that break is one of the best things that you can do. The other thing is actually to remove things off your phone. And the reason why I say that is because if it's there, it's so easy to click. Like it literally is, right? And I think that the challenge there is if you're there and it's scrolling, and they're made to be addictive. Like all the different apps we have, like the algorithms are created to keep you on there, to shock you, to do different things, to show you content that they know you'll like, so you'll stay on the platform more. And this is where you want to use social media, not be used by it. And I think that's very important to think about, to be able to think in your day, where am I being used by social media? Because if you're scrolling, if you're going through this and you're not doing the work that you need to do, maybe that's time to check. Is this really serving me? Is this something that I want to do? The other element is to get someone else to manage what you do, right? Who could manage your Instagram, who can manage these different elements so that suddenly you are disassociated from it. And I think that's one of the best things you can do. Changing your environment is the best way to remove those distractions.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually, I did that. I hired a social media manager. And I still do have a hand in it. There are still certain things I do, but during the day when I'm working, that was always kind of my time sapper, because that's what I was. I was on my phone. I was doing this, checking, my likes, checking my replies. And now I've got someone who does that during the day, so I can focus on other things that I'm doing, and at night I'll go in and check stuff, and, I'll have a role. But yeah, I mean, it was just I felt like I was constantly, in my truck, on my phone, and not working or not overseeing the crews, when I should have been, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely relate. I mean, I have the same. I mean, I have a team manage my different social medias. They drop me a message if someone replies and they're not sure what to say to them. And I think that being able to, build a system around that, I think really makes a lot of sense. And for those listening, it's figuring out what system could you put in place that can help you move forward without the distractions, so that you can, focus on the business and get what you need done.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. All right. I love it. Okay. Well, we're going to go on to the next section here in your book. It's 6 types of entrepreneur procrastinators. And we're not going to cover all of them, but Flowmies, seriously, get this book, read all of them, because they all apply. But we're going to talk about 3 that I thought were really for us. Sure. So the first one was the avoider. Who is the avoider, and why do you call him that?
Brilliant. So when I look into the different types of entrepreneur procrastinators, there's actually different business personality types, which will do different ones. Okay. And when we look into the avoider, this is very much the artist of the business personality type. This is the creative, someone that loves what they do. You don't even have to pay them. Like, they genuinely enjoy it. They love what they do. Right. And I think a lot of people listening love window cleaning. Like, they genuinely love what they do. They see the smiles, they enjoy it. It's relaxing. They get in the flow. So when we look into the avoider, it's actually very similar to what we spoke about previously, in that the avoider is someone that says, you know what, I'm probably going to do that a little bit later, right? They distract themselves with everything they possibly can in order to just not do a certain task. And sometimes this is because they struggle with imposter syndrome, fear of failure. There's different elements there. But how you can identify this is thinking about how many tasks are you off-putting in your business? Right? Are there tasks that you should do, right? I'll need to get done, must do, but you're just not doing them. Yeah. And this is where you start to identify what you're avoiding, and to be able to move forward. And I've had clients that will focus on everything apart from marketing, or everything apart from taxes, or everything apart from content creation. And this is where you start to identify those elements that can actually help you move forward, because those are the areas of growth. It's not doing what you're doing currently. It's if you can start to target them, you'll get new challenges and you'll move your business forward in a different way.
Love it. Very good. Yeah, that's so true, though. I mean, the thing is when I become the avoider, I'm usually doing things that are needed to be done. They're just not the most urgent things I need to do, right? So it's like you justify
it is important.
It is important. I mean, yeah,
everyone has to, clean this a little bit. I'm a window cleaner anyway, right?
Exactly. It's usually stuff that, I do need to get to that. It's just not the thing I should be getting to, as we use that word "should" again. Okay, that's one. The other one was the perfectionist. This is me. So please explain how the perfectionist can be a procrastinator, which seems counterintuitive.
Cool. Got it. So one of the things that I will say, and I think this is important, is I want to make sure that when people read this, they don't say, that's me, because what is important is this is a behavior, because we can't change who we are, but we can change our behavior. And the reason why I want to make that distinction is because sometimes if we just feel we are that way, suddenly it's very difficult to not be that way, right?
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
The perfectionist is someone that sets very high expectations of themselves, surprise, surprise. And they spend so much time trying to perfect everything that it becomes very challenging to move the business forward, because they're constantly trying to spend so much time getting it perfect. And the truth is, if we look at window cleaners, they want to make the windows perfect.
Yes.
So it makes sense. When you're doing your work, being a perfectionist actually makes sense when you're doing window cleaning, so that when people look at it, they're like, wow, this guy is spotless. However, if you start applying that to your business, suddenly it doesn't work out the same way, because you're trying to do that with your marketing and you can't know all the outcomes. You're trying to do that with your Instagram. Suddenly it's very challenging. And this is where, if you look at those transferable skills, and if I'm working with people that do tech, it's the same thing. Being a perfectionist is great, right? Not in business though. And this is where we take on those different roles and we start to understand that, yeah, I am a perfectionist in that area of my life, but I'm choosing not to be in another. And I think that's a very important distinction for people to make and actually utilize moving forward.
And I think that's empowering too, because you have control rather than being a slave to your perfectionism. You can say, okay, I'm going to choose to use it in an avenue where it benefits me, but then I'm going to not use it in this other realm where it's actually hurting me. And that's very empowering, because a lot of times we don't feel like we have that power to control how we act. So I love that message. That's beautiful. Excellent. Yeah. Okay. The other one is the worrier. So why are the worriers procrastinators?
Sure. So the worrier is a very fascinating one. And I think that when we look into both the perfectionist as well as the worrier, this is more of the business personality type of a system manager, someone that likes to put the systems in place. They like to get things done. They like to sort things out in a very processed way. Now, the challenge there with the worrier is the self-doubt. It's the element of, can I really do this? What happens if this screws up? Like, what happens if I'm not able to do this? And it's that worrying and that doubt that stops us progressing in the business, because suddenly we're questioning ourselves. And this is very often where people get an analysis paralysis, because they're worrying if they make the wrong decision, what will happen? Can they make the right decision? And this is where through time you build that muscle of decision making, and it could be the lesser of two negative outcomes. However, once you've made it, you can actually move forward. And this is where it's so important to do what you can to overcome that analysis paralysis. And sometimes we all have scotomas, we all have blind spots, and we may not even be aware that we're doing it. This is why I'm such a big fan of gaining mentors, coaches, different people to help you so that you can understand why you're doing it and then have that awareness, but then do something about it to interrupt the pattern next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's spot on. Yeah. We do a lot of mentoring for new businesses as part of ITF. So we, the ones who have been in doing a window clean for a long time will mentor some of the upper comers. And sometimes they'll even be people where they haven't even started their business yet. They know how to clean windows. Maybe they've worked for someone else and they're thinking about going on their own. And a lot of times they will be stuck in that just right where they're ready to go, and they just won't take the next step. And a lot of it is that paralysis that comes from worrying, because like you said, there's so many things that can go wrong. And obviously they're investing money that they've worked hard to save into this, and they're afraid that they're going to dump it into something that's going to dissipate, and so they worry about that. And a lot of times our role is just to tell them, yeah, you might lose money, but that's the only way you're going to get there is if you try. And so you just have to be willing to take that chance and willing to kind of follow the flow of whatever your work does. And so, we just try to say, look, you've got support in the group, you've got support from family, whatever their structure is, and try to help them to take that, because the worrying oftentimes is over stuff that really, one, they don't have any control over, and two, stuff that may never happen,
Yeah.
It's just help them to see that it's that's just one of the natural parts of business is taking that step.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing is bearing in mind that when you do get something wrong, right? I heard a guy called Keith Cunningham say this, and it's dumb tax. All right. We all pay dumb tax. We've all made a mistake, and that's okay. I think the important thing is being able to understand how it happened, avoid it next time. And this is why listening to podcasts like this is so great, because you can learn from other people's mistakes and actually implement it into your business. But the truth is if you were always successful, you wouldn't learn. So we have to fail in order to improve in other areas of our life and our business.
Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go to the last portion that I wanted to talk about from your ebook. And this is 8 proven methods to remove the habit of procrastination. And again, Flowmies, we're not covering everything in this, so please get this book to get the rest, but these are some that I thought were really helpful for us. So one is focus on a clear goal. So how is that something that's helpful to a small business owner when we're trying to get over procrastination?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that we face with procrastination is there's so many different things that we could do, right? The truth is we're in an information overload, but we're starving of wisdom. There are so many things you could do on social media. You could do ads, you could do LinkedIn, you could do this, you could do that. There's so many options that very often we're just completely overwhelmed. So when I say focus on a clear goal, what I like to do is to get rid of calendar year goals, screw 12 months, right? Instead, focus on 3-month period of time. And I call these power years. Now, what's great about a power year is you have these 3 months, and then suddenly you've got a direct focus. You can say, right, what is my 3-month aim? Like, what am I focusing on? And it gives you that ability to also say no to other things. You've got that focus, and suddenly you're breaking your year down into 4 separate parts, 4 mini years. You've got no idea how much more progress you'll make when you've got a clear goal of where you're going, because now you're not procrastinating because you know where you're going. You have to make each week count. And then suddenly other things move out the way and you can gain that focus. And I think very often it's easy to be distracted with so many things, but this gives you the ability to have a focus, know where you're going, and actually move forward in a way that's much, much more sustainable.
I like that. I think I'm going to institute that today. That is awesome. I love that. So 4 small years in your year to help you to accomplish that.
Yeah. So I call them power years. I do it with all my clients, and I chat to them. I say, all right, what are we doing for this power year? Let's make this happen. Right. And suddenly it's a completely different perspective. It's absolutely game changing. And I'm telling you now, when you implement it, you will make huge progress in your business. I mean, I see people do more in 3 months than they usually do in a year because of that focus.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you know what this made me think of, because I'm a runner. That's what I like to do for fun, for my hobby. And when I run by myself, it's clear I have the path. I get the miles that I want to do. But in the mornings, I have a dog. I run with my dog, and it's fun, but it's a lot of stopping and starting. It's a lot of going off the track. He wants to go down this neighborhood. So I don't want it. That's not really where I run, but I'll go with him because that's where he wants to go, because that's where his little dog buddies are. And he has his little pass. And so I look at the maps afterwards, and if I'm out for the same amount of time, but the time where I'm just focused and running on my own, I've got 5-6 miles down. And then the same amount of time with my dog, I've only done like 2, maybe 2.5 miles. And it's because of all the distraction, and I feel like that sometimes with my business, having a lack of focus on certain things kind of makes you feel like you're just going and then just kind of turning wherever the pressure takes you. So if you can just focus on one thing for 3 months and that's your goal, because it's not such a huge investment, like you said, like a whole year of, I'm going to do this in the year. Now it's just like I love it. That's okay. I'm starting that. I'm instituting that right away. Okay. The next one you have is know your why. So why is that important?
Well, I think being able to know your why is of fundamental importance to every single business owner. And that's looking into, why did you get into business? Okay. Not understanding why you got in and why are you still in it? Because very often the reason why you got into it may be different to the why as why you're in it right now. And the reason why I say this is important is because that is the fuel that gets you going and gets you moving forward. Okay. You can have the best car in the world, but if it hasn't got any fuel, it doesn't matter. Now that's your fuel. And I move away from motivation. And I want people to instead go towards inspiration. Inspiration is breathing life into, it's being inspired. It's saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. And this is where understanding that why, whether it's your family, whether it's providing for them, taking them on holiday, whether it's being able to give to charity, having that huge impact, suddenly you've got a why that's going to help actually bring you forward and pull you towards something, as opposed to beating yourself up and pushing yourself towards something. And I think what is fantastic about that, when you really understand that and look at it regularly, is it helps you understand why you're doing this and you start to follow through more. It gives you that sense of urgency and suddenly you do much more compared to what you were doing previously.
Yeah, very good. I think it's really important too, because when we do something for so long, it's easy to start going through the motions, right? We do it because that's what we do, as opposed to having a purpose for what we're doing. And if our purpose is just to keep the business functioning, then there's no growth and we're not directing our blows, so to speak, in the way that we should. So I do like that. I like that, having a purpose. What is it? And you're right. I know my why has changed. In fact, in the last podcast we did, we talked a little bit about the why. And it's because, our lives change, our perspectives change. We gain people in our lives, we lose people in our lives. When I had my daughter, the meaning of the business took on a whole different realm. It went from very casual to almost a side gig. It wasn't a side gig, but it was like a side gig, to now this is what supports my daughter, and allows my wife to be home with her, which was something very important to her, So I love that. That's very good. The other one you said was focus on the next step. So talk a little bit about that, how that's important for us to do.
Well, I think that it's so easy for us to be completely overwhelmed with doing so many different things, right? And especially probably when you're getting started in window cleaning or you're looking to scale up, you've got so many different things to manage. You've got to be able to manage your clients. You've got to be there to deliver the work. You've got to also do taxes. You've got to do marketing. You've got to manage all the maybe the payrolls, getting that cash coming in, managing cash flow. There's so many different elements that often happens is we just get overwhelmed. We've got really no idea what to do. And I think the simplest thing, and I say it time to time again, whether you're a solopreneur or you are a serial entrepreneur with multiple 7, 8 figure businesses, you've just got to focus on the next step. There is no one that can multitask and do everything. You just need to know what is the next step. And that is such a great question when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're really unsure, to just say to yourself, all right, what's my next step? Like, what's the next step? All right, I need to just call that client. Okay, do that. You call the client. Okay, now what do I do? Well, I probably need to call the other client. Then you call the other one, right? And suddenly you start to create that snowball. And I think that's such a fantastic way to interrupt that pattern and just focus on the next thing, as opposed to getting overwhelmed, really not sure what to do, far too many plates are spinning, and you've got no idea where to start. And I think that if you can break things down, if you can make it simple, if you can come up with a schedule that works for you or a system that works for you in managing your time, that's incredibly important, because there is no one size fits all. It's figuring out what works best for you, applying it, and then really making it happen moving forward.
Yeah, that's good. That makes me think a little bit about, I kind of envision like a painting where there's a lot of detail in it, and you can appreciate the painting as a whole, but when you start to focus on just different aspects of the painting that come into focus, then the painting becomes more meaningful for you, And I think with our entrepreneurial journey, as we continue to make progress and we go, if we just focus on the whole thing, the whole business or whole project as we're doing it, we lose sight of kind of the really neat things that happen one at a time. And like you said, if we can take a step, that's not overwhelming. If we can just take a step, then we appreciate the value of that step. And I think it makes the whole journey of a business owner as something more important.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to really look and admire the progress you're making and not just focus on the destination. It's not about hitting that certain income goal per month. Yeah, that's nice. But it's actually about who you become on that journey. And it's figuring out, like, how do you grow as a person? How do you change whilst you're on that journey to be able to do the things that you want to be able to do?
Love it. Very good. Okay, our last one. So again, this is 8 methods, but we're only going to talk about 4. So the 4th one today: tackle challenging tasks first. And this is actually a message we do promote a lot in ITF. So please fill us in on this one.
Cool. I mean, I think no matter what productivity books you read or hacks you read, and I'm sure that you guys have done in ITF as well. And it really, it's eating that frog to begin with, right? Yes, I think Brian Tracy says
that's the same term we use,
right? You eat that frog in the morning, it's going to be, and that's the worst thing you're going to do. So I always find for myself, I have a lot of energy in the morning. That's when I'm going to do the tough stuff. I'm going to get it done, get it sorted, and then you feel fresh for the day. And I think that the more you can do that and also manage your energy during the day to match the tasks, it makes sense, so that you can actually get the stuff done, the perhaps more challenging stuff that you may not want to do because you've got that negative association with it, and actually just get that done, get it out the way, get it sorted, and actually schedule it as well. When it's scheduled, it gets done. Don't just have a pile of lists, because lists can go on forever, right? Have a schedule, get it done, and actually move forward. And suddenly procrastination doesn't happen as much because you know what you're doing. You have that focus and you can't be distracted with other things.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's great. I want to conclude now, because I know we're getting past the time that you promised. And first off, just before we get into the other thing, I just want to thank you again for making the time. You're in the UK, so this is late over there, and you're staying up late to make time for our group, and we really, really appreciate that. But one of the other reasons why I wanted you on is because, like we mentioned, you are a business coach, but like a business coach on steroids, and you have a program called the Entrepreneur Lifestyle Accelerator. It's on your website. Could you tell us a little bit about it and how it might be able to help small business owners in their growth of their business?
Sure. Well, I was chatting about this the other day, and I think that the common approach that I think a lot of people have is they hire a business coach, they give them some sort of generic methodology, and then you have to implement the methodology, and it takes loads of time. It's like a part-time job trying to figure it out, and then suddenly you're overwhelmed, and it just doesn't work out. And over the years that I've done this, right? I figured out that there are some certain things that work with entrepreneurs. And the most fundamental thing is getting the psychology right so that you can actually implement everything that you're doing. So you're no longer procrastinating. Mm-hmm. So when everything happened with COVID last year, I decided that I was going to put everything that I did program-wise that I used to teach in 2-day events all around the world. And I think there was 3 or 4 different events that I used to run. And I just crammed everything together and I created my accelerator program so that entrepreneurs, no matter where they were in the world, could actually benefit from some very specific content for entrepreneurs that gave them the tools they needed to be able to move forward in a sustainable way, to move from, I'm an overwhelmed, I'm stressed out, I'm burning out entrepreneur, solopreneur, to giving you the skills and the tools needed to master yourself so you're no longer procrastinating, so you can become a consistent entrepreneur, so that you can actually be present with your family and friends on the weekend, not have to worry and not feel guilty when you finish work, but instead know that you're finishing on time, get everything together and actually build your way up to that financial freedom as well, if that's your goal. And but by doing that, it's just been amazing, the feedback and the impact that we've had, especially with my trainers. I monitor everything personally. I make sure things are going swell. And I can't express how amazing it is to see people go through it and go out the other side and see the huge impact that it has on their life as well as their business.
Awesome. Well, the program fits in well with our goals. With ITF, we're not just about making money. We obviously want people to be good business people, business owners. We want them to see a profit. We want their businesses to do well. But ultimately, we want them to be able to do what the business was meant to do, which is family, which is helping others. And that's this entrepreneur lifestyle accelerator course does seem to fit that bill. So I was glad that you were on here to be able to promote that. So Flowmies, if you want more information, it's on www.ben-ivey.com. That's Ivey. And if you just click on there, it's called the Entrepreneur Lifestyle Accelerator is the course. You can get more information there. Is there anything else that you want to promote before we end the podcast, Ben?
Sure. Well, I think the main thing is just for people to be able to connect and reach out. Like I said, I'm more than happy to connect. I've got a variety of different promotions and offers that I have available. So I think the main thing is just being able to implement what you take. And everything that we mentioned with regards to the PDFs and the different things that I have, like it's all free. You can check it out. And I think it's important to check that out, see if you like it. And then if you want to get in touch, that's cool. If you don't worry, just drop me a message. It's good. But I think the most important thing is implementing things, right? Knowledge is potential power. No matter how many podcasts you listen to, how many times you've tuned in, I would just really recommend that you take one thing from today and actually utilize it, do it, use that, and see the impact that it has in your life and business. And I just want to thank you again for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to connect with you. Love the questions that you asked. And I really hope that the Flowmies have got some value from this episode.
Oh, they definitely will. We really appreciate it. Again, I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for making the time. And Flowmies, I'll go ahead and drop a link to that article that we based this interview on. I know it'll benefit you. But thanks everyone for listening. Thank you again, Ben. And catch you later. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Flow on.